The small town of Willowbrook had always been a peaceful, idyllic place, nestled deep in the heart of a dense forest. Its narrow, winding streets were lined with charming cottages, and the townspeople were known for their close-knit community and warm hospitality. But beneath the surface of this picturesque town, a dark shadow loomed, shrouded in mystery and fear. It all began with whispers, hushed conversations held in the corners of the local diner, and late-night gatherings by the fireplace. Children were vanishing without a trace, leaving behind bewildered parents and a growing sense of unease. The disappearances were sporadic at first, and many attributed them to mere accidents or wanderlust. But as the days turned into weeks, and more children went missing, the once peaceful town descended into a collective paranoia. Parents clutched their children tightly, afraid to let them out of their sight even for a moment. The laughter of playing children on the streets was replaced by a heavy, foreboding silence. In the heart of this growing unease was Mark Donovan, a middle-aged psychologist who had recently moved to Willowbrook. Mark had been drawn to the town by its serene beauty, hoping to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. Little did he know that he would soon become entangled in the town's darkest secrets. Mark was a tall man with a rugged appearance, his face marked by the wisdom of years spent counseling troubled souls. He had a reputation for being empathetic and understanding, qualities that had served him well in his profession. His office, nestled on the second floor of an old Victorian house, had become a sanctuary for many in Willowbrook. As the disappearances continued, Mark couldn't help but notice the toll it was taking on the town's residents. Families were falling apart, marriages strained, and anxiety levels reached a fever pitch. The once thriving community was now fractured and on the verge of collapse. One evening, Mark sat at his office desk, his brow furrowed in deep thought. He had been receiving an increasing number of parents seeking his counsel. They spoke of sleepless nights, anxiety attacks, and the haunting feeling that their children were in imminent danger. Mark knew he had to do something more than just offer therapy sessions. It was on that fateful evening that Mark's life took an unexpected turn. He received a visit from Sarah Reynolds, a distraught mother whose son, Timmy, had vanished the previous week. Her eyes were red from crying, and her voice quivered as she spoke. "Dr. Donovan, please, you have to help us," Sarah implored, clutching a crumpled photograph of her son. "Timmy's been gone for 7 days, and the police can't find any leads. I've heard rumors about the Boogeyman. Do you think it could be real?" Mark leaned forward, his expression serious. "Sarah, I'll do everything in my power to help you find Timmy. And as for the Boogeyman, well, we won't jump to conclusions, but we'll explore every possibility." With that promise, Mark Donovan embarked on a journey into the heart of Willowbrook's darkness. He began by meticulously gathering information about the disappearances, speaking to the families of the missing children, and studying any patterns that might emerge. As Mark delved deeper into his investigation, he couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something sinister lurked just beyond his reach. It wasn't long before he started experiencing strange and unsettling dreams, vivid nightmares that seemed to be a window into the unknown. In these dreams, Mark found himself wandering through the dark woods that surrounded Willowbrook. The forest, once a symbol of tranquility, had transformed into a haunting labyrinth of twisted trees and shadowy figures. He would hear the faint cries of children echoing through the trees, their voices filled with fear and desperation. And then, in the distance, Mark would catch a glimpse of a tall, shadowy figure. It was the Boogeyman, a grotesque creature with long, gnarled limbs and piercing, malevolent eyes. The Boogeyman would beckon to him, whispering dark prophecies and secrets that sent shivers down Mark's spine. Each morning, Mark would wake up drenched in sweat, haunted by the lingering sense of dread from his dreams. He knew he had to uncover the truth, not only for the sake of the missing children, but also to put an end to the nightmares that tormented him. As the days turned into weeks, Mark's investigation led him down a twisted path, filled with ancient legends, superstitions, and secrets long buried. He couldn't help but wonder if the Boogeyman was a mere myth or a malevolent force that had plagued Willowbrook for generations. Little did Mark Donovan know that he was on the brink of a discovery that would reveal the town's darkest secrets and challenge everything he believed about the nature of fear and evil. The town of Willowbrook was about to confront its deepest fears, and Mark was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Mark Donovan delved deeper into the legend of the Boogeyman, determined to uncover the truth behind the sinister disappearances plaguing Willowbrook. He spent countless hours poring over old records and folklore, searching for any clues that might shed light on the mysterious figure. One afternoon, Mark sat in the dimly lit Willowbrook Library, surrounded by dusty tomes and weathered manuscripts. He had discovered references to the Boogeyman in the town's archives, dating back centuries. The creature was said to be a malevolent spirit, drawn to the innocence of children, and it was believed to lurk in the very forest that bordered the town. As he read through these accounts, Mark couldn't help but feel a chill crawl down his spine. The stories spoke of children who had ventured into the woods, never to return. The few who had survived claimed to have seen a tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes and elongated limbs. Mark knew he needed to speak with those who had encountered the Boogeyman firsthand. He reached out to the families of the missing children, hoping to hear their accounts and gather more information. The stories he heard were horrifying and consistent. One evening, Mark sat with Emily Turner, a mother whose daughter, Lily, had gone missing a year ago. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she recounted the events of that fateful day. "We were having a picnic by the river," Emily began, her voice trembling. Lily was playing with her dolls on a blanket nearby. I turned my back for just a moment to grab some sandwiches from the basket, and when I looked back, she was gone. Emily's description of the incident mirrored the others Mark had heard. In each case, the children had disappeared in the blink of an eye, as if the Boogeyman had plucked them from existence. The parents were left with an overwhelming sense of helplessness and guilt. As Mark continued his interviews, he learned that some of the children who had returned from their encounters with the Boogeyman were forever changed. They spoke of nightmares that persisted long after their return, dreams filled with the haunting presence of the creature. Determined to uncover more about the Boogeyman's lair, Mark decided to venture into the dark heart of the forest. He knew it was a risky move, but he couldn't ignore the growing sense of urgency. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of unease, he set out on his own. The woods were a maze of ancient trees, their branches intertwined like gnarled fingers reaching out to grab him. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. As Mark ventured deeper into the forest, the shadows seemed to grow denser, and the feeling of being watched became almost palpable. He followed an old, overgrown trail that led him further into the heart of the forest. It was as if the forest itself was guiding him, drawing him closer to the unknown. Mark's heart raced, and his senses were on high alert. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was treading on sacred, forbidden ground. Hours passed, and Mark continued to navigate the winding trails, each step taking him further from civilization. The forest seemed to close in around him, and he felt a growing sense of isolation. It was as if the very woods were conspiring to keep their secrets hidden. Finally, Mark stumbled upon a clearing, and what he saw sent shivers down his spine. In the center of the clearing stood a massive, ancient oak tree, its branches twisted and contorted like the limbs of some grotesque creature. At the base of the tree lay a crude makeshift shrine, adorned with candles and faded drawings of the Boogeyman. As Mark examined the shrine, he couldn't help but wonder if this was the lair of the creature, the place where it lured its victims. The air was heavy with an oppressive presence, and Mark had the unsettling feeling that he was not alone. Just as he was about to leave the clearing and continue his investigation, he heard a whisper, a faint, chilling voice that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the forest. "You shouldn't have come here, Mark Donovan." Mark froze, his flashlight trembling in his hand. He knew that voice, the voice from his nightmares. The Boogeyman was real, and it was here, in the darkness of the woods, speaking to him. In that moment, Mark began to understand that he was not the only one in this town who had been drawn into the Boogeyman's twisted game. The sinister figure had been watching, waiting, and it had plans for Mark Donovan that were far from over. As the whispering voice grew louder, Mark knew he had to make a choice: retreat and abandon his quest for answers, or confront the darkness head-on, no matter the cost. The legend of the Boogeyman had become all too real, and Mark Donovan was about to descend even deeper into the abyss of terror that lurked in the heart of Willowbrook. As the weeks passed, the grip of fear in Willowbrook tightened. and the boogeyman's reign of terror continued unabated. Mark Donovan found himself in a relentless pursuit of answers, his obsession with uncovering the truth growing stronger with each passing day. The town was now shrouded in darkness, not just when the sun dipped below the horizon, but even in the broad daylight. Children were kept indoors, their laughter silenced, and their innocence stolen by the pervasive fear that hung over the town like a malevolent cloud. Mark couldn't stand by and watch any longer. He was determined to confront the boogeyman, to understand its motives, and, if possible, to put an end to the horrors plaguing Willowbrook. But he knew he needed more than just folklore and eyewitness accounts. He needed a direct connection to the enigmatic entity that haunted his dreams. One evening, as Mark sat in his office, surrounded by the flickering light of a single candle, he made a bold decision. He had read about the use of hypnosis in unlocking repressed memories and accessing the subconscious mind. He believed that, perhaps, through hypnosis, he could establish a link with the boogeyman. With a deep breath, Mark reached out to Sarah Reynolds, the mother whose son, Timmy, had gone missing. She had been the first to approach him for help, and Mark felt a strong connection to her. He believed that her emotional connection to the boogeyman's terror might serve as a bridge to the entity itself. Sarah agreed to the unconventional approach, desperate for any chance to find her son. Together, they prepared for the hypnosis session, with Mark explaining the process and ensuring Sarah's comfort and safety. As the room darkened, Mark began to guide Sarah into a deep state of relaxation. Her breathing slowed, and her eyelids fluttered as she descended into a trance-like state. In this altered state of consciousness, Mark began to ask questions about the day Timmy had disappeared. Sarah's voice was calm, yet laced with sadness as she recounted the events of that day. She described how Timmy had been playing near the edge of the forest when he suddenly looked up, his eyes widening in terror. He had whispered something that Sarah couldn't quite make out before he vanished into thin air. Mark continued to probe deeper, trying to establish a connection between Sarah and the boogeyman. He asked her to describe the entity, to recount any details that Timmy might have shared with her before he disappeared. As Sarah spoke, her voice began to change, becoming colder and more detached. It was as if she was no longer speaking as herself, but as a vessel for something otherworldly. Her words sent chills down Mark's spine. "The boogeyman," Sarah whispered. "It comes from the shadows. Its eyes, they glow with an otherworldly light. It's ancient, Mark, older than time itself. It hungers for the innocence of children." Mark felt a shiver run through him, realizing that he was indeed in the presence of something beyond human comprehension. He had tapped into a dark, primal force that had plagued Willowbrook for centuries. In the days that followed, Mark continued his investigation, focusing on the cryptic clues he had gathered during the hypnosis session. He searched for references to ancient rituals and legends that might be connected to the boogeyman. It was as if he had unearthed a hidden tapestry of darkness that had been carefully woven through the town's history. As the boogeyman's presence grew more palpable, so did the fear in Willowbrook. The townspeople lived in constant dread, their nights haunted by the sounds of unseen footsteps and the flicker of glowing eyes outside their windows. Mark couldn't help but feel a growing sense of responsibility for the town's suffering. He had opened a doorway to the supernatural, and there was no turning back. But he was determined to unravel the mysteries of the past, to understand the boogeyman's motives, and to find a way to end the reign of terror once and for all. In the heart of the night, under the veil of darkness, Mark Donovan knew that he was on the precipice of uncovering the town's most horrifying secrets, secrets that held the key to the enigma of the boogeyman and the salvation of Willowbrook. The town of Willowbrook was now on the brink of collapse, its residents living in constant terror, and its very soul tainted by the presence of the boogeyman. Mark Donovan had uncovered the dark secrets shrouding the disappearances, and he knew that the time for a final confrontation with the malevolent entity had come. Armed with the knowledge he had gained through hypnosis and intensive research, Mark embarked on a desperate mission to confront the boogeyman. He believed that the ancient oak tree in the heart of the forest held the key to the creature's origin and its power. It was there that he would make his stand. As Mark ventured into the woods once more, he couldn't escape the feeling that the forest itself had come alive, its trees whispering dark secrets, and its branches reaching out to ensnare him. The air was thick with foreboding, and Mark knew that he was treading on ground that had borne witness to centuries of suffering. Finally, he arrived at the clearing with the ancient oak tree, its twisted branches clawing at the sky. The makeshift shrine still stood, its candles flickering ominously. Mark felt the presence of the Boogeyman all around him, its malevolence palpable in the air. With a deep breath, Mark began to speak, addressing the entity that lurked in the shadows. Boogeyman, I know what you are. I know your hunger for innocence, your thirst for fear. But I also know your secrets, the dark history that binds you to this town. The response came in the form of a bone-chilling, raspy voice that seemed to emanate from all directions. You have come far, Mark Donovan, but do you truly believe you can challenge me? I am as ancient as the night itself. Mark felt the temperature drop, and a cold wind swept through the clearing. He knew he was not alone. The Boogeyman was here, watching, waiting. As if in response to the challenge, the ancient oak tree began to tremble, its branches contorting and writhing as if possessed by an otherworldly force. The ground beneath Mark's feet quaked, and the very air seemed to thicken with malevolence. In the darkness, a figure began to materialize, a tall, grotesque silhouette with glowing eyes and elongated limbs. The Boogeyman had taken form, and its presence was suffocating. Mark's heart raced, but he stood his ground, his resolve unshaken. You may be ancient, but you are not invincible. You were born of fear, and fear can be conquered. I know your origins, the pain and suffering that birthed you. I know why you haunt this town. The Boogeyman's voice echoed with a mixture of anger and curiosity. You speak of secrets, Mark Donovan, secrets that have been buried for centuries. Do you truly wish to know the truth? Mark nodded, his voice unwavering. I do, and I will expose those secrets to the light of day, no matter the cost. With a bone-chilling laugh, the Boogeyman lunged at Mark, its elongated arms reaching for his throat. Mark fought back with all his strength, his determination to reveal the truth giving him newfound power. The battle raged in the darkness, the ancient oak tree bearing witness to the struggle. As the final blow was struck, Mark's flashlight fell to the ground, casting eerie shadows that danced around the clearing. The Boogeyman let out a howl of agony, its form dissipating like smoke in the night. It was defeated, its power broken by the revelation of its own origins. The forest fell silent, the malevolence that had haunted Willowbrook for generations finally vanquished. Mark Donovan stood alone, battered and bruised, but victorious. He had confronted the darkness, exposed its secrets, and freed the town from the Boogeyman's reign of terror. In the days that followed, Willowbrook began to heal, its residents slowly reclaiming their lives and their children. Mark became a hero, the man who had faced the unspeakable and emerged victorious, but he knew that the scars of that battle would never truly fade. As he sat in his office one evening, reflecting on the harrowing events that had unfolded, Mark couldn't help but wonder if the Boogeyman was truly gone, or if it lurked in the shadows, waiting for another opportunity to strike. The darkness, it seemed, would always find a way to creep back in, and so the tale of Willowbrook, the Boogeyman, and Mark Donovan came to a close, but the lingering fear and uncertainty remained, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown and the courage it took to confront it.